Things are not what they are. Things are what we think they are. Sometimes you just want to stand in the corner and stare out of the window. The problem is, when you're not smoking and staring out of the window, you're an antisocial, friendless idiot. If you stand and stare out of the window with a cigarette, you're a fucking philosopher. The power of reframing things cannot be overstated. It's significantly easier to find a way to reframe your experiences as enjoyable while you improve them, rather than waiting for them to be done before you give yourself license to be happy. Successful people see opportunity in every failure. Normal people see failure in every opportunity. Both are right. Only one gets rich.
Yeah, so this has been something I've been thinking about a lot, which is basically the shittiness of stuff, which is when you're growing in a business, it's very painful. When you're stagnating in a business and you're plateaued and you don't know what to do, it's very painful. When you're declining and you also don't know what to do, it's very painful. And so that means that all conditions of reality are painful. And so if pain is a prerequisite for reality, then it means it's just a signal that we are alive. And so in thinking about that, rather than pain as a problem, it is a signal that I'm breathing, and then becomes irrelevant.
How do you ensure that you're not suffering unnecessarily? You know, pain can be a useful signal. It can tell you to move away from certain things that are suboptimal.
Yeah. I probably have relatively contrarian views on this. But just even the judgment on pain, I relatively reject. Just like pain is good, pain is bad. I mean, in the gym, to give a gym example, they found that the pain that you experience when you're going to work out, and there's a difference between like massive joint, you're like, oh, I just snapped a muscle, and like just feeling bad. But feeling bad has zero correlation to your performance in the gym. And so I remember reading that for the Olympic, weight teams, they talked about that. And I was like, oh, well, if it has no correlation, then it's almost irrelevant and I can just keep living my life. And so I think the ultimate version of the resilience that you were referencing earlier is, rather than, in the beginning, you're like, I feel bad. And then you think that should weigh on the decision of whether you do the thing that you're supposed to do. And then you start realizing that you can do the thing even though you don't feel good about it. And you start hypertrophying it. But I think the ultimate version of the hypertrophy, when the muscle becomes a tendon or it just becomes fused, is when you don't even consider how you feel. It's just not a thought. You just do it.
That's that movement from sort of type 2 to type 1 thinking, from it being very conscious, very effortful, to it's just a reaction. I get up and I start to write.
Right.
And
you don't use up any willpower.
No, because it's just what you do.
Right.
There's a Rory Sutherland that we were talking about yesterday. He's the only guy that I've ever heard swear in a TED talk. And he gave me this idea, which is kind of related. Things are not what they are. Things are what we think they are. For instance, you're doing a hard workout, which gives you a signature feeling. You're laid on the floor, panting, heart rate at 180, sweating from everywhere with the taste of metal in your mouth. This is oddly enjoyable. But if this exact same sensation was to spontaneously occur in your car while sat in traffic, you'd call an ambulance for fear that you're having a heart attack. Framing is everything. Rory Sutherland says, sometimes you just want to stand in the corner and stare out of the window. The problem is, when you're not smoking and staring out of the window, you're an antisocial, friendless idiot. If you stand and stare out of the window with a cigarette, you're a fucking philosopher. The power of reframing things cannot be overstated. It's significantly easier to find a way to reframe your experiences as enjoyable while you improve them, rather than waiting for them to be done before you give yourself license to be happy.
So a friend of mine, she's a very, very successful therapist, and she always asks her patients when they come to her and say some terrible thing happened. She said, what would it take for this to be amazing? And so, for example, a lady comes, says, we're getting a divorce. And she says, so what would it take for this to be amazing? And so it just completely shifts the reality of like, okay, how could this be an amazing thing that could happen to me? And this is relevant for me, shifting gears, because we just had a big tryout inside of our company for a presentation slot that we have an event. So we had a bunch of the leaders in the company.
It was like the fucking Hunger Games.
Yeah, we put a cash prize out.
Fight to the death, pitchforks.
We did. No, we put a big cash prize out there. Oh yeah, I totally did that. I told her, I was like, I'll have no expression.
Just in a toga.
Yeah, exactly. And I could tell that some of them were nervous. And I thought about this because, I speak a fair amount and I don't get a lot of nerves in general. And I have a whole bunch of thoughts on that. But the most basic one is that if you're still feeling anxiety, which many of them were like, hey, I'm so nervous, or hey, I have a lot of anxiety before going up. I thought about it, and champions just interpret anxiety as excitement. And if you're excited to go up, then you're like, I'm amped versus I'm stressed. But it feels the same. But the way you frame it totally changes how you feel when you're stepping on stage. But my 2 cents of, if you are feeling lots of anxiety, it means you need to practice more. That's just my 2 cents. And that comes for everything, whether it's to have a meeting or give a presentation or write an email or do a book. Like if you feel nervous before you release it, then you probably didn't work on it enough. And I think the reality is that most people, to get not anxious about whatever they're doing, you have to do it so many times that by the last time you're doing it, you're bored of it. Like you don't even want to see the thing again. When you're sick of it is the point where you'll have no adrenal response to the stimulus because you've seen it so many times. You could do it in your sleep because you hate it at this point. And then when you get up, you're like, oh my God, let's just do this because I can breathe this thing
over with.
Yeah.
What's the gap between your expectation of what is going to happen and the requirement that you need to perform, right? This is where I need to be, and this is how I think I'm going to perform, as opposed to the other way. So I saw this firsthand when I did the live tour last year. So I did, I think, 17 shows in 28 days, 3 continents, right? Like proper tour, like real proper tour thing. And, I did 4 work in progress shows and then that run all around UK, Ireland, Dubai, Canada, US, Canada again, US again. And I could see, because it was around about every other day for a month. And each time that I stepped out on stage, every single time that even though I'd done the prep, I'd spent all of this time, I'd done the thing, I'd tried to, I'm not nervous, I'm excited. I'm not nervous, I'm excited. Still, that degraded over time until at the end of it. And this is why comedians, I think, when they end up doing really big tours, one of my friends did a 300-date tour of the same show. He said, I no longer felt like a comedian, I was a performer. Oh, yeah. Because he's not stepping out on stage. He is so dialed and routinized that he's bored while he does it. And that's how you look at, oh my God, Joe Rogan just did Netflix live to fucking God knows how many millions of people. The metropolitan area of San Antonio's internet probably went down for him to be able to get that connection moving. And how could he do that? Well, all of these people watching and all the rest of it. That set that Joe did, I've seen at the Vulcan Gas Company downtown in Austin, and I've seen it at the Mothership in different iterations for coming up on 3 years now. And his last special was 6 years ago. That guy has said those sentences and waited those times and got those laughs and understood the inflections and the little pauses he needs to do maybe 300 times on that one set. There's no more degrees of free. The only thing that could go wrong is a real quirk mistake that's kind of, to be honest, out of your control. If you misspeak a word when you're paying attention, that's not your fault. So yeah, that's how people have unbelievable performance ability. It's just a case of stepping there sort of 1 degree of competence at a time.
And if we think of confidence as the percentage likelihood of what we think is going to happen will happen as a predictive metric, then in order to be more confident, we want to have more proof that what we think will happen will happen. And so the easiest way to do that is to do it a lot of times. And so it would be reasonable to say that you're confident that it will go the way you want because it has gone the way you've wanted so many times in a row before.
I've just realized, I've never thought of this before, the fact that the word confidence in how we describe it from a psychological perspective and confidence is in the interval level that you have numerically are the same fucking word. That's so funny.
Operationalizing. What? How do you become confident? Do it enough times that you feel like it is unlikely that what you think should happen won't happen.
My model of the world is accurate.
I'm confident when I go up to girls. Well, you start going up to girls and you start tanking, and then 1 out of 10 times it goes well, and then you do it another 10 times, and 2 out of 10 times goes well, and then 4 out of 10 times, and then 8 out of 10 times, and all of a sudden you're confident because you have a high degree of predictive power when you say it will go this way.
That's such a good reframing of confidence. And the best part is you get to use the same word.
And you can boil it down to inputs. You just have to do more.